Welcome to MacStories Unwind, a weekly review of everything MacStories and more. This episode of Unwind is brought to you by MindNode. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is the editor-in-chief of MacStories.net, Mr. Federico Viticci. That's your formal interview for this Friday, Federico.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for having me on my show, John.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, I mean, everything's yours if it's MacStories, I suppose. I guess we can say that. I mean, if you're going to be that,
No, but I do
way.
appreciate. But I do appreciate the formal introduction,
All right.
even though I'm no stranger to this podcast. So thank you.
No, you are no stranger. You've been here a few times in the past.
A few times, yes.
We should dive in. It was a pretty quiet week on the site, but there was some big news. We had the Apple event that was announced. That's next Tuesday, the 20th of April, and the invitation went out with a spring-loaded graphic. That was the kind of the tagline for the invitation, which I don't really think there's much to make of this. I think my only reaction to this was that the artwork looks an awful like something that you would have had before the Easter holidays, maybe in the early spring, not as we're kind of deep into spring, but that's maybe reading too much into it. But it's definitely a spring theme.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, my theory at this point, given also the things we've seen on Twitter, is the artwork seems related to the Apple Pencil.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think so.
There's a new Apple Pencil coming. Is the rumor we see today on Twitter? Somebody posted a video showing the sort of like a leak of the Apple Pencil 3rd generation model. With Apple going back, it appears to the shiny look instead of the matte texture of the 2nd generation pencil. So we'll see. I don't know, but it's a fun event. Maybe it just means that there's going to be a bunch of stuff, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be an iPad. There's going to be AirTags, maybe Macs, and it's spring-loaded because it's a bunch of stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it'll be a variety of things probably. I'm starting to feel like AirTags are the Air Power of the latest generation of products. We finally got past the Air Power, but now AirTags. I would love to know when that was first rumored. It's been at least a couple of years, hasn't it?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. It's been a very long time. Time seems to stand still during a pandemic, but even this seems like a long time. I personally am expecting, hopefully, an iPad Pro and maybe one of the iMacs. Maybe not really the Pros, but the base model iMacs, which haven't changed a whole lot recently. They feel an awful lot like the MacBook Air and the Mac Mini, as in terms of the types of Macs that would probably be next on the list to get an M1. Okay, Federico, we both got kind of excited about this next product because it's not often you see hardware that just is a little bit surprising. I mean, I feel like we've seen an awful lot in the last year that's just iterative, but Spotify has built some hardware and it's very different. And it's different in the sense that it's really just a remote control for the service that you put in your car. And I know a lot of people on Twitter, when I talked about this and seemed a little excited about it, were poo-pooing it because it doesn't really do much, but that's kind of the point. I guess people who have modern cars aren't going to care about this because what it is all it really is a screen that communicates over Bluetooth with your iPhone or an Android phone, whatever it happens to be, to display Spotify content on the screen. It has some buttons, it has a big knob, and you use the touch screen to navigate and start playback. Mm-hmm. And the playback works over Bluetooth too, or a cable, with your car's audio system. So this is really kind of a product for older cars that don't have some sort of infotainment system in them, right? That already works with Spotify or other services. So that's why I think some people were like, oh, whatever. But there are a lot of cars like that on the road.
Well, yeah, I think so. I think that's a very good point. And I also feel like what's fascinating, obviously, is the idea of Spotify expanding to the car via dedicated hardware. I think it's a fascinating approach. And there's plenty of cars, obviously, that don't have any smart features. But even those that do, like my car has Bluetooth, right? And in theory, it's got smart features in the sense that it's got a dashboard and a media mode. Too bad that media mode, when you plug in your iPhone via USB cable, it says iPod.
Yeah.
It's the old iPod legacy mode
Right.
that a bunch of cars still ship with. And it's not really smart. It doesn't have CarPlay, so it's got Bluetooth, but there's basically nothing else. And so I personally would love to add a layer on top of that, which is a Spotify UI that provides me with physical controls that are not distracting, that are easy to use, and that give me an easy way to browse my playlists, my Discover Weekly, whatever it is I want to listen to in the car, or a podcast, right? So I would like to see more of this, of, additional accessories that you can buy for the car without having to necessarily, rip your dashboard open and have a custom CarPlay receiver installed.
Which is very, very expensive.
It's very expensive, and I don't really want to do that. Like, I don't
Right.
want to leave my car at a mechanic or something and have him do that and spend like 700 euros for that. No, thank you. Like, I don't care. My next car probably will have CarPlay. I don't
Right.
know. But for now, sure, I'll spend, eventually, what's it going to be? $80
Right.
on the car thing or similar devices.
Yeah. Right now, it's limited to the U.S. and
Yeah.
it is limited to premium
But
subscribers.
will it be limited to the US, like geographically speaking, or not?
Yeah.
Would be my question.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a little strange. They're definitely doing a limited rollout because right now you go and you sign up with your email address to express your interest. And if they pick you, they ship it to you without charging you for the $80. They just charge you shipping is all. So it's really a test device, I think. And it doesn't have a battery even. It doesn't have speakers, doesn't have any of that kind of stuff. It really is a remote control for what you see in the UI on your phone, which is interesting. What I want to try it with, though, is I want to try it with like a Bluetooth speaker and see if it would work with that.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, because
I
it could
like
be a remote
Okay.
control for like a
Sure.
standalone speaker.
Yeah, totally. I think it will. Well, because cars, they have like the profile. That it's the word I'm thinking
Oh,
of.
profile.
They have a specific Bluetooth profile just for car units.
All right, so maybe I'll be disappointed.
Maybe you will, maybe not. You just gotta test it out yourself.
All right. Well, let me cover two more stories we had on the site this week. One is that Apple is expanding Fitness Plus and the offerings there. They have new classes for pregnancy and for older adults, which are two nice additions. That
Are you happy, John?
I am very happy about it. I think it's very nice. They're rounding out their offerings, and I'm more happy. I don't know if you're referring to the older adults or the pregnancy, but I'll leave it at that. I guess.
Well, I mean,
You're obviously talking about the pregnancy workouts. I know, but they've also.
oh, you have news to share with Jennifer?
I do. They have a new trainer too. One new trainer joined the group, as well as one of the trainers moved over to the HIT group. So I don't know if that was really press release worthy, except that perhaps they just needed to kind of fill this out since they just had a couple of new class types otherwise. And Jane Fonda, Federico, you'll be happy to hear. Jane Fonda is in the Time to Walk. She's going to be in the next episode next week for Earth Day, sharing some stories and music. So if you've been using that, you can listen to Jane Fonda, who was very much involved in the 80s exercise craze. All right, Federico, the last story I want to talk about is a video that Quinn Nelson did on Snazzy Labs, which was
yes.
It was a very good deep dive into HomeKit because he bought a new house recently and he's been equipping it with HomeKit devices. And I found the devices that he picked really interesting. I have a few of them in common with him, but what was more interesting, I think, and more informative for someone thinking about setting up a system at home is the way he approached the whole thing and the things that he decided were important in terms of, one of the ones that I agree with 100% is don't try mixing too many different smart assistants because it's frustrating and it leads to complexity. You really need to, having one centralized smart assistant and app where you can go to control all this stuff makes it a lot easier. And I think that that's really good advice along with some of the other things in his video. So I would definitely encourage people to check that out, especially if you're in the market for some sort of new HomeKit device.
Yeah. Yeah, Queen does good work, and this video is in my list. I gotta watch it for when I eventually move and have to make decisions about the smart home hardware that I
Yeah,
want to
that's going to give us.
purchase.
I know that when you finally buy a place, Federico, it's going to lead to many episodes of App Stories about all
Ooh,
sorts of things.
I can only imagine the kind of things we'll talk about. Yeah. In
Oh.
fact, I will tell you, I'm buying a place only for the content. John.
There you go. Everything for the show, everything for the site.
It's all for the show, man. It's all you got to do it
All
for
right.
the show.
Everything's research. We've said that many a time before. Federico, on Club Mac Stories this week, we had some cool shortcuts. You had what I think is one of your most useful shortcuts, which is MusicLink.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Which allows you to do what? I'll let you explain it.
So MusicLink lets you generate links for other music streaming services for songs and albums. So that whether you're using Spotify or Apple Music or Tidal, in fact, stay tuned for the next episode of App Stories, where we're going to talk about a bunch of these lesser known services.
Yep.
But no matter the service you're using, I think we've all had this problem. Like you come across a song or an album that you want to share with your friends or your family, but those people are using a different service than you. And MusicLink, it helps you generate links for those services. So you can use MusicLink. You can just copy a link in Apple Music or Spotify, or you can use the share sheet and invoke MusicLink from there. And then you can just pick additional services. You have a list and you can choose, I want to get a Tidal link, or I want to get a YouTube Music link, or a Spotify link. You just pick and choose the links that you want to generate. You wait a few seconds and you get all the links in a text block that you can share on iMessage, via email. You can save it to your notes. You can do whatever you want because it just opens the share sheet. So it's a very easy way for you to start with a song or an album and generate additional links for it to other streaming services.
That's a really great shortcut, Federico. I also had a shortcut this week, which is, all the cool kids are doing this bi-directional linking and linking back to things. And I decided, why not link up GoodTask and Craft? And so I used a combination of a shortcut alongside with some URL schemes to make it possible to create a GoodTask task that has the Craft document a link in it that you can get right to the note with all the context, or you're in Craft and you tap on a link and it takes you right to that specific task in GoodTask. And finally, we had an interview this week with Shawn Hickman, who is the developer of Sofa, which is the app for managing your downtime. It lets you collect things like video games, books, movies, TV shows, all those sorts of things. It's a great app. And we had some questions for Shawn about that, along with some questions about WWDC. And I guess I shouldn't forget to mention that we also featured CardioBot, which is a fantastic app for tracking your cardio fitness. Federico, why don't you tell us a little bit about App Stories?
On App Stories, this week we continued with part 2 of our music mini-series. And this time we took a look at music discovery, playback apps, and a bunch of other utilities. So it's all about the apps that we can use as third-party additions to Spotify and Apple Music and your primary music streaming service of choice. And stay tuned for part 3 out on Monday, because we are going to conclude our mini-series with a look at third-party additional music streaming services. It's a fascinating look at different options in the music streaming space in 2021.
Yeah, there are a lot of options out there, and Federico, of course, has tried most of them. Okay, Federico, I want to thank our sponsor for this episode and all of Mac Stories this week, which is MindNode. And I think our friend Marcus at MindNode knew that I was going to have to read this word on the air, and so he dropped it into this sponsorship, which is, the question that they posed is, have you ever had a Geistesblitz? Do you know what a Geistesblitz is, Federico?
Yes, I'm all about the Geistesblitz.
Oh, very good. I got you to say
Sure.
it. Good. Well, it is a flash of inspiration. It's the kind of inspiration that hits you when you least expect it. For instance, maybe you're in the shower or you're walking the dog and it can often lead to a flood of new ideas. When that happens, it can be really easy to get overwhelmed and frustrated, but it's precisely the feeling that motivated the creation of MindNode, because what MindNode lets you do is it lets you get those ideas down and start seeing the connections between them. The app has evolved into a brainstorming app that helps users from the very first spark of inspiration to fleshing out their ideas and bringing them to life. Recently, they added outlining, which is one of my personal favorite features, which is a great way to seamlessly move between capturing and organizing your ideas in a whole different way from the mind map that is the core of MindNode. It's an app that's been growing for 13 years, and it's during that first moment of inspiration, though, where MindNode really shines and got its start. So next time an idea hits you, next time you have one of those Geistesblitz, you have to give MindNode a try. It's free to download on iOS and macOS. Just go to mindnode.com/download to learn more about everything that the app does, and check out the sponsor post on MacStories too, which I'll put a link in the show notes to so you can see more details there. Our thanks to MindNode for their support of Unwind and MacStories. All right, Federico, we've got a couple of different picks today. I want you to lead off with your music pick.
Yeah, mine is a music pick. It's an EP by a band called Glimmers.
Mm-hmm.
I discovered Glimmers thanks to Spotify. I believe Spotify put them in my Discover Weekly a few weeks ago. They have an EP out now called By the Lips. And this is just my kind of stuff. So it's like, I would say pop rock with a tinge of emo, maybe.
Definitely a little tinge of emo. This when I heard this, I was like, this is a very Federico album, and it's a very good album.
Yes. They sound kind of like Paramore, maybe.
Yeah, a little bit,
but with less punk rock. I would say they have a female vocalist, of course. So that's that similarity.
Yep.
Maybe less punk rocky and more pop rock. Yeah, maybe. Anyway, it's a new band. A new indie band. They formed, I guess, officially last year in 2020. I love this EP. It's really good. It sounds really fresh, and it's extremely my kind of stuff. I would recommend start listening with the hit of this EP would be Not Good at Goodbyes.
Uh-huh.
But also the By the Lips, the song that gives the name to the EP, is also very good. And they have another EP coming out on April 23rd, so next week. It's an interesting band. I love the fact that Spotify was able to put them on my radar thanks to Discover Weekly, and they're not really well known at all. They have, I believe, less than 20,000 followers on Spotify. So go check them out and support support these kinds of indie bands, because they put out good music, they do good work, and I really enjoy them.
Yeah, this is a really good EP start to finish. And then I listened to a little bit more of their catalog that was on Spotify and enjoyed that too. So definitely worth checking out. My pick this week is a TV pick, and this is one that I stumbled on. This is one that's near and dear to our good friend Mike Hurley's heart, because he loves the Great British Baking Show. And
yes,
right?
Yes.
Have you watched this, Federico? I don't think you have you?
I am familiar with the Italian version of it.
Oh, all right. Well,
yes,
it is essentially Survivor for amateur bakers, which is a very strange thing to say, but it works really, really well. And over the past weekend, Jennifer started watching this because somebody had recommended it to her. And it was on in the background. I was doing some other things. But before long, she watched maybe 2 or 3 episodes. Before long, I got sucked into this and spent the rest of Sunday watching this first season. Mm-hmm. And then we started watching it during the week. And we've been watching it on and off for the past week or so. And I believe that on Netflix, there are 8 seasons available. It's also, at least in the U.S., available on PBS, which is the public broadcasting system. But when I looked at their website, they only listed 5 seasons. And I think that may be because the show has moved around a little bit in the UK between different versions of the BBC and maybe another outlet. So it has changed a little bit over time. There's been different presenters and judges, but it's fantastic. They get a big group of amateur bakers. These are not professionals at all, who they bring together, and in the later seasons, it's under one giant tent on these nice grounds of this estate, it looks like, and they go through a series of challenges. Each episode has 3 challenges. There's a signature challenge, a technical challenge, and a showstopper, which is always a really difficult, obscure type of baking challenge. And they're given instructions to a degree, but a lot of it they have to kind of figure out for themselves. And it's all timed. So there's the pressure of the clock. And it does a lot like you would expect from Survivor, where there are these little interludes with interviews with the people about their backgrounds and how they got into baking. And it's really strange, but it's also really fun and really well produced. So yeah, I will admit, though, that don't watch this on an empty stomach. It'll make you very hungry, and it'll probably send you off to a bakery to buy something. Yeah, it's a great show, and I highly recommend it. It's the kind of thing that's great for the reason reality shows are so popular, which is it's a nice way to just kind of kill some time without having to think too much.
Turn off your brain.
Exactly. Yes. And I really do think, Federico, there was one episode where all their challenges, I think it was in season 5, were Italian pastries of some kind. And I thought about you. It wasn't just pastries. They actually had to bake a pizza too.
Nice.
A Neapolitan pizza. And they did a very poor job with the pizzas, a lot of the people. I looked at it, I was like, oh, Federico would not like that pizza. But you would be a very harsh judge of the Italian episode. But it's good. So a lot of them have themes like that, where maybe one week the theme is a particular country's cuisine, or maybe it's bread, or maybe it's something else. So it's worth checking out. All right, Federico, I think that's it. I think we're going to call it a week, and we will be back next Friday. And hopefully by then we'll have a long list of announcements to tell everybody about and recap for the week. I want to thank our sponsor again for this episode, and that is MindNode. Of course, you can find me and Federico over at MacStories.net. Federico is on Twitter and Instagram, where he's at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVWR HWS. Talk to you next Friday, Federico.
Ciao, John.